I opened up a Mountain Dew Game Fuel, and the lid.
Ready?
Yeah, well, the lid that's on it is a very confusing lid. It's not your normal lid that you open like any Coke can on. So it's got the instructions on it, and I'm like, if you have to put instructions on the lid of your Coke can, you have failed. I want to welcome everybody to the show, and for our listeners out there, it's Friday.
Yay!
And welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast. There will be some clapping in the background of our non-studio audience. So I want to introduce John Moore from IQpack, and I want to, give you today's show is marketing's dirty little secret, tips for building your brand via marketing or whatever channels you want to use or don't use. But before we get into that, John, I want you to kind of take the floor for a bit and share your passion. Tell us about IQpack, and tell us what's your nerd. What really makes you tick?
Yeah, there's yes, and thank you for having us on here. And there's quite a few things that make me tick. I have a driving passion to help people. Always have. And I never want to look at things from a sales perspective, but more from, professionally, what value can we instill and what ways can we help companies become bigger, better, bolder, stronger, and more profitable. And I think that's lent us very well. It's lent me very well in life, in a former life. And since I founded IQpack 8 years ago, it's served very, very well. Because people read through that stuff, right? If you're salesy, if you want to go in and try to sell something, but if you take a totally different approach, try to understand their needs, their concerns, their top initiatives, and then craft a story on how we believe we can help or drive value to that organization and help them meet their top goals and initiatives. That's what it's all about. That's our model. And you asked what kind of a nerd am I? I'm a nerd. In general, I am a nerd. But I am definitely a packaging nerd. My wife and I can't go to a store that I'm not looking at and evaluating packaging and thinking, well, that's interesting, but why did they do that? And wow, did they think about the impact to the environment or the impact to material spend or labor or shipping, getting the product here? So that's how I think, is more holistically. My dad was a project engineer for Colgate-Palmolive, and thank God I got some of his better traits. One of his traits was listening and evaluating and processing and looking holistically at things, not knee-jerk reaction, try to fix this or put your finger in the dike, type of mentality. But what can you do to drive long-term sustainability across the platform? And that's really who I am. I'm anchored in packaging. I think as if I am a package, believe it or not. And then how would people use me? How would people handle me? How would they ship me? And, what things can I do as a package to drive efficiencies as that common thread in the operations and supply chain? It's crazy. I wake up almost in cold sweats at night. I have a notepad next to my bed, and have a recording device in my car, so when things hit me. And I think of packaging in totally different terms than anybody else thinks about packaging. So that's what my nerdism or nerddom is in packaging and operations and supply chain.
Yeah. Well, that fits. I mean, because we always we say it's a paraphrase of a Will Wheaton quote, but it's not what you love, it's how you love it. And when I first met Jonathan, his concern was, well, I'm not really into comics or the movies or any of that stuff. I'm kind of a marketing kind of data guy. I like seeing outcomes and all that. And I said, well, that is your nerd. And I kind of had to explain to him, like, and show him that. And it was like, it's a, aha moment and a revelation of, what defines a nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know the feeling of walking into something and being in an industry and looking at it and going, just kind of fascinated with how it was put together. I was in engineering for 14 years.
Mm.
So I did a lot of work with medical equipment and designing it, like overhead monitor carriers. But I also worked for retail for store fixtures. But I look at things like that and I'm like, I know what gauge metal that's made out of, and whether if they use pop rivets, a weld, or screws, whatever it is. You kind of look at how things are made. And you kind of get used to it, and you kind of think about like how much material went into it to make it, and and cheap metal is not cheap, especially if you get into stainless, because we did a lot of work with Whirlpool and GE for the doors. We made doors. That's also my fault. Sorry.
Now I know who to look for.
Yeah. I mean, after 14 years in the industry, I went from that to the automotive industry. So, things fall apart. Don't call me. That's not mine.
Well, I tell you what, the automotive industry is tough. We are in the automotive industry from a packaging perspective and packaging optimization, supply chain. I tell you what, I've told a lot of people in different walks of life, if you can make it in automotive, you can make it anywhere. It's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah. We did vacuum. I was part of the team that would design and lay out the vacuum filters. These things are, if you're familiar with them or not, they're about as big as a house, and some of them could be even larger. And so it was really, at the time, they're oversimplified in my opinion, in what they do and how they work. The piping and where that goes and how that's done, doing all the schematics for that was a lot of the work that we did. How many couplers do we need? How many pumps go for this one? What's the clean tank? Where's it going to sit? And all that kind of stuff. And, it's just kind of like, I remember 2005 to 2008 was when I was doing that. So it was a great time, as you can imagine, because we all know what happened in that time.
Oh, yeah.
And, one of our primary customers was General Motors, and we had a $30 million backlog. It disappeared in like 2 days. Yeah. And they owed $15 million, and the company was Man and Hummel. I don't know if I have to bleep that out now, but, because they're still in business, but it was just a subdivision of theirs that was doing this work. So maybe I've scooted past that by saying that. But yeah, it's a weird business though. After that, I got into building car dealership websites. So it was just kind of like this industry that in some way or facet keeps chasing me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can't get up.
It's that hook that keeps bringing you back in.
So I'm sure as since you've talked with Mitch and John, you figured out their nerd and what they like. Mine has always been movies. I like any kind of movie. I do like comic book movies. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is something that I'm a big fan of. But I am a Batman guy, which is why I wear a Batman T-shirt on my LinkedIn and everywhere, because I'm like, well, it's on brand. And so, but I was into graphic novels a lot, is what I collected. So I know a lot about that. Grant Morrison was one of my favorites, and what he did with the character in the comics. So that's kind of just a quick snippet of me. Transformers, other things. I'm a kid of the late 80s, early 90s. I'm 44, so you can kind of gauge the time that I grew up, and so that's kind of a little bit about me, because I know we've not, unfortunately, be able to meet face to face, but kind of gives you a window into a bit about me. So is there anything in that when you were growing up that was a favorite of yours, John, to partake in, whether if it was comics or a toy line or anything like that?
Yeah, there was a few things. One, I was a big fan of G.I. Joe, and I'm in the pre games and pre everybody has a computer lifestyle, and my parents were from the Great Depression, so they weren't real big on too many amenities. We had one black and white TV in the house. There was 4 children, and of course my parents. And good
grief, John, you're me.
Yeah, we'd watch the evening news, and I'd try to catch a cartoon maybe Saturday morning. But other than that, I was a boy's boy. I was out, eating dirt and swimming in flood water and chasing frogs and turtles and bringing that stuff home. And so I still love the outdoors. My parents instilled that in me to go outside and exercise. Even to this day, I mean, people in my neighborhood look at me like I'm crazy, which, I guess because I'm a nerd, but I still have a push mower. Everybody in our cul-de-sac has a riding mower. So they look at me like, poor John. I mean, he can't afford a riding mower. It's like, no, everybody's got chainsaws and electric this and electric that. I cut trees down with a saw, like a manual saw, and
oh my goodness.
And I cut firewood, with mallets and wedges and those and hatchets and that kind of stuff. And not that I'm super in shape, but I believe in being physical. My dad would not let me have a calculator in high school. He said, "You're not going to get a calculator. You can forget it." Of course, my dad's electrical engineer, process engineer, and I had to learn mathematics and calculus and formulas by myself. Guess what? Usually what's between my ears, which, believe me, there's a lot of cobwebs there, but doing those kind of things. But you asked about, what I was attracted to. Well, I really like Superman. He could fly. He was, solving major global problems. He's a problem solver. He wasn't a superhero. He was a problem solver, right? There's a bank that's going to get robbed, and that's not going to happen. And I can remember running up down the street in our dead end street. I'd tie a sheet around my neck, and there goes John. He's run up down the street for 30 or 35, 40 minutes. I love G.I. Joes. I had a small G.I. Joe collection. I had Legos. I would build different buildings and homes. Probably my favorite was an erector set that my parents got me. And I would build cranes and buildings and moving things and, robotics and those kind of things with the erector set. And
now, John, I have two questions.
Yep.
Well, one question and one kind of an illumination. When it comes to G.I. Joes, which G.I. Joes did you have? Did you have the little ones, or did you have the bigger ones?
Oh, heck no, the bigger ones. I would call them, 12, 14 inches tall? Yeah, the big ones.
I mean, they were the same. I mean, they were the same size as like a Barbie was for girls, and came with all the clothes, the weapons, the equipment. You could get him he had like a Land Rover and.
And I had the Land Rover, and I tied a rope to my bike, and I put stuff like 2 or 3 G.I. Joes in it, and I go as fast as I could to see how long they could stay in.
And having a sheet tied around your neck, running down the street. Man, John, we're kindred spirits, bro.
Yeah.
Well, I know you mentioned Legos, and I found that that's a company that kind of is on topic for this podcast, actually. They nearly failed twice. I think the first failure they nearly had was in the late 90s. And then also toward probably the mid 2000s. They got into creations that were not, they got away from the brick, basically, I think. And what saved them was when you mentioned erector sets, my brain immediately went like, that's when they came out with all those mechanized, I forget what they call them, but they allowed people to grab them and create like little machines, and build them with Legos. And then a bunch of guys that, like in my background, they would take and hack the code and start making them do other things. And at that moment, Lego had to decide, like, okay, do we get lawyers and aggressive with this and lock it down, or do we kind of let them do their thing and see what happens? And very smartly, they chose the latter. And ever since then, it's been a brand that it's been enormously successful. And they don't spend a lot of money on marketing because of that. I think that's their end. I mean, that's a brand that I think, Mitch, you call them legacy brands.
Yep.
They just they've earned it. You know, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't see that because there was a time when they did a lot of that. But where they're at today, I mean, you're talking about brands that, you know, I don't care who you are. There is a brand out there like you just described that in your childhood. This is what you remember. This is what you did, you know. And for me, it wasn't G.I. Joe's for me. It was Transformers. And you know, Transformers and He-Man. And so, you know, everybody's got some sort of connection to something that still to this day, it makes money in some medium, in some way. And you're seeing that, all that blood, sweat, and tears, all that's translate. Like I talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe a lot because when it started out, it was rough. You know, Kevin Feige was really, I don't think, and he was, Mitch, was he around in the very beginning? I know
he's been there since the beginning, but I think the amount of control he's had up to the point where it wasn't until they launched Marvel Studios as an official entity that he came in and they gave him the reins. Before that, he was a producer with other producers. Avi Arad was like the main producer in the early generation X-Men movies, you know, starting with the first X-Men movies, the first Daredevil movie, the first Spider-Man movies. He had leadership of the film properties at that point. It wasn't until they said, okay, we want more control over our properties, over our characters, over our stories. We're opening our own studio and we're going to do it the Marvel way.
Yeah, but even before that, I mean, when they were trying to get Iron Man made, Iron Man wasn't going to be the first film. He was trying to get Doctor Strange, and it wasn't Feige. It was the guy that plays Happy. He's the guy that's the chauffeur for
John Favreau.
Jon Favreau, yes, Jon Favreau. He was actually in the beginning stages of that. So he was trying to get Doctor Strange to be a part. Just get it kickstarted again to begin this dream. And so he did a lot of meetings, a lot of feet to pavement type stuff. And that took him to Sony and said, hey, let's do a movie where Doctor Strange and Spider-Man are in a movie together. And they said at Sony, no thanks. Well, guess what happened today, everybody? Benedict Cumberbatch joins the cast of Spider-Man 3, Doctor Strange himself. So isn't it funny how all those years ago that got, I guess you could say, planted, and now here it is. And so it's a very long journey to, you know, build a brand. It's a very long journey to get to where Lego is. And some of the brands that you mentioned, Mitch, and I kind of let you did the research on these, like we got on our list today, Trader Joe's, Krispy Kreme, Costco, Sriracha, GoPro, and Tesla.
It's just basically, I mean, the lead into the podcast being, you know, one of the dirty little secrets in marketing, and that is you don't have to unload a bundle of money necessarily on advertising. I'm saying advertising. In order to promote your brand. There's a lot of other variables that go in the mix, and I'm sure Jonathan will have a lot to say about this. The little asterisk here is that's advertising. Advertising is just one component of your overall marketing picture, okay? And marketing is everything from the architectural design of your locations to the interactions that your service people, your representatives have with the customer. And it's everything that happens in between is marketing. These brands are brands that have taken those other components and capitalized on those in order to help make their brand successful. And I may not go into these necessarily in the order they were mentioned, because a good example of this is Sriracha. Their lack of an advertising budget per se isn't because they've made a conscious decision that they don't want to advertise. Their CEO, David Tran, says, quote, "I don't advertise because I can't." The reason is they have a total commitment to the quality of the ingredients that they source for Sriracha, that it doesn't allow them the extra cash to unload on advertising. But by the same token, there is a consistency in their product that creates enough word of mouth and enough loyalty to that brand that it doesn't hurt them. Now the question could could be posed. Well, if they did advertise, could they grow? Well, sure. But, every brand owner, and you've got different companies, some are run by boards, and you got some that are run by sole proprietorships or a sole entity or a partnership. It depends on what your brand is committed to.
Mm-hmm.
And with Sriracha, it is a complete and total commitment to sourcing the right ingredient to have a consistent experience with their sauce, no matter where you go and no matter where you buy it. And I find that incredibly laudable.
Yeah. Some of these, this speaks a lot about me. But what stood out in the list was Krispy Kreme. You know what? That's okay. I own it. I'm a fat guy. But I thought to myself, like, here's a brand, like, when you see Krispy Kreme, it's not a question if I should buy it. It's just it's a yes.
It's how much you're going to buy, probably, isn't it? Not if you're going to buy it.
I mean, how can you not go into a Krispy Kreme and that smell as they're making them? That's just the sell right there, isn't it? It's like you smell it and you go, I want 1,700 of those. And you just don't care what the bill is. They're not cheap, but still.
To your point, marketing is as much experiential as it is having information thrown at you or being exposed to media about the brand. It's what it all boils down to, whether you advertise or not, is that experience you have with that brand,
Mm-hmm.
creating an experience with the brand that makes people want to come back and have it again and again and again. And food is just one of those things that it's so sensory, and it's so satisfying and appealing in so many ways. It gives you an advantage in that respect that maybe some less tangible, is that a good word? Some less tangible products just don't have that luxury, because you have to tell more of a story about your thing, if you will, to make people want to interact with it. You have to find those qualities about it. And Jonathan and I were in a meeting today with a prospect, and it's the idea that you can throw all the information you want at an audience. But what's going to cause them to interact with you and come back and want more is if you hit an emotional sensory chord in their brain or in their heart that makes them get up and act. People don't act based solely on facts. You can throw facts at people all day long, but what makes people get up out of a chair and move is you strike an emotion with them. You strike a sense with them, something that causes passion, whether it's a passion for flavor, a passion for a sound, the way something looks, the way it feels. You've got to hit one of those elements. You've got to hit that emotional spark in order to get people to act. And food has the luxury of being able to do that on a sensory level.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to your mind, John, as far as a brand, what would it be? Like, would it be, for example, Apple? Would it be, what do you think? Like, what brand?
Well, there's a lot, but you asked the first. I think it's probably Apple, and not because you threw that out, but I think it is. And it wasn't so much, and it's not so much how I feel. One of my partners in IQpack was describing marketing and branding, and he had an Apple iPhone in his hand when he did it. And I forgot what the relevance was, but I think we were talking about marketing and branding. Go figure, of all things. And he held his iPhone and he gave me a visual that has stuck in my mind. And he was holding it. He said, "John, it opens up the world to me. I've got the world at my fingertips with my Apple iPhone." And he said, "The shape, it fits in my hand. The feel, it's soft. It like blends into my hand." So it was like that whole, and Mitch, to your point, kind of the sensory experience that he was describing, and the emotional part about it, that he's literally got the world at his fingertips when that iPhone is in his hand. And that's really stuck with me. And and I view things that way, right? Like our brand IQpack. How do people feel when they hear IQpack? What emotion does that evoke? Does it evoke a call to action? Does it make them feel happy or sad or better or worse? Or that's important to us.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important to me as the founder and co-founder of IQpack. I want people to have a great experience with IQpack, and I want when they hear that company name, they get some sensory involvement, and it evokes some emotion that we made their life better. We made their business more sustainable. We made it where we gave them greater bandwidth, and they could get home at 6 o'clock in the evening and not 10 o'clock in the evening. Just
Yeah.
you helped.
You helped.
We helped, and you guys hit it right on the head. It hits on an emotion, and that's very important to us. And not as a lead in, but that's why we believe marketing and branding is so important. And listen, we're not marketing and branding experts. If we were, we'd be in the marketing and branding industry like you guys, right? And we don't know what we don't know. So we're sticking to what we do pretty well, and that's packaging and supply chain, and packaging optimization and supply chain. And and leaving it to the experts like NerdBrand to help us kind of get through this minefield and develop the brand that invokes our vision and the feel to our customers that we want.
Well, I think from the very first meeting, I think that you and I had together, and with your partner, I think one of the most compelling things you said in all of those interviews is that the best thing we can get for our customers is a promotion. And I think that's kind of that,
Mm-hmm.
You prick that heart. That's not so much about the money. It's about giving somebody the confidence, giving them the tools and the bandwidth, like you said, to pursue, presumably what they want, which is to move up in their company, to have more ownership. And to me, that's where, especially on the sales side, when you're getting into those conversations where people get a little hesitant to bring an outside firm in, that's that kind of heartstring that you really do have to pull at. I think that's a great one that you guys have expressed to me, at least.
Absolutely. To that point, if we were in it for the money, I'd be a day trader, right? Maybe not me per se, because I usually buy high and sell low, and I know that's opposite from the economics that I took in school, but. I mean, it's helping people. It's helping making people better. It's developing relationships and long-term sustainable relationships with our customers. And you know what? At the back end, the success as far as monetarily will come, but there's also success measured in other ways, right? Creating jobs, creating culture, creating a better life for our employees, and seeing them drive passion and excited about being a part of something bigger, and giving them the autonomy to make decisions and not be micromanaged. So I hope we're creating a great culture. I think we are. I feel like I'm the chief culture officer. I'm not even the CEO. I'm the founder. Listen, I'm a knuckle dragger. I'm a packaging guy.
I don't think so.
Listen, I want the company to be better. I want us to impact more lives, and I can't do that if I'm the CEO. If I'm the CEO, I'll be confused. I won't be in my safe place or where I drive passion, and that's through packaging. That's how I do all these things, is through packaging. I don't want to be a CEO. I don't even want to be the president. Guess what I want to be? I'm a founder, co-founder. I want to be the director of packaging, because I think my passion lends itself better to do the things we need to do, and for me to make an impact to our employees, our customers, and the world from that position, not from a position of CEO. And what are titles anyway, right?
Right. Well, John, you hit a great point, and kind of at the core of this whole the topic of this whole podcast. about what I mean, it's sort of, this is a podcast almost about what marketing
Yep.
is. And that's a marketing decision.
Yep.
That's a marketing decision because you're staying true to your convictions.
Yep.
And on this list of brands, these are brands that are all committed to the original convictions of the brand that made them successful from the beginning. And you are committed.
Yes.
I mean, what you've just voiced is a commitment to a philosophy that has made you successful at the beginning. And that's if your brand is going to stay the successful brand it is, you have to stay committed to those core
Absolutely.
all the way through. Costco, in some respects, Costco is another good example of that. Because again, a company that doesn't advertise at all, really, not in the conventional sense. But here's the key: they have like an 80 to 90% retention rate in their members. Well, ask yourself, why is that? It's because they stay committed to the core principles that made them successful to begin with.
Yeah, and Costco's model is closer to Netflix than it is to Kroger. And that's something that's sometimes I think missed, because when you get into Costco, you see all this stuff in bulk, and it's like, do I really need a pallet of Heinz ketchup?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay, well, if you're Jonathan, then maybe I'm going to say maybe to be careful, but John's going to come back and say yes, no matter what. So send all your pallets of ketchup to NerdBrand Agency at care of Jonathan Payne. We're going to have so many barbecues in 2021 with hot dogs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of steer it back in the groove a little bit. I love ketchup too, by the way. But that's the whole idea. That, I mean, you look at Costco's core principles, and that is even they only keep select brands on the shelves. They don't carry everybody. They have a whole staff that is basically quality measurement, and they look at all these brands and they make sure that they retain a certain level of quality, and that's the brands that are recurrent. They have brands that turn over frequently because they want to expose their customers to new things. Which, if you've ever been to Costco on a Saturday or a Sunday, that's when everybody goes, because that's when it's free sampling. You can go in there and have like a 3-course meal if you want to. But it's a commitment even to the brands that may change out, a commitment to brands that are consistently good and of high quality. And this goes right down to their house brands. A little personal story. I bought a friend of mine as a gift a bottle of Costco's brand of tawny port. Okay? And if you're into wines and liquor at all, then that may resonate with you. But because the ratings of this are comparable, the ratings on their house brand of tawny port, which can be a pretty expensive commodity, is on a par with some of the higher end brands in that segment. And when you have that kind of commitment to your own house brands to that level of quality, that says something about who you are. Also, in addition to their employee turnover rate, I mean their membership turnover rate, their employee turnover rate is really low too, because they offer, advancement and probably the highest pay in that segment, and plan and abilities to grow as an employee. So that whole commitment to a quality experience is with their customers, it's with their employees, it's with the brands that they carry. So again, that going back to John's philosophy, it's that commitment to a core brand message and sticking with your core beliefs, and it's real. It's not contrived. It's not just something you put on your website or something for public consumption. You believe it and you live it, and people want that more and more. Because of the web, people have access to information, and they know when you're not real.
Yeah.
And we preach this to our clients. People will pick up, they'll see through the veil immediately, because there's too many places they can go to look under the curtain. So,
yeah. Well, there's companies that if you will go off the rails if you start to go outside of what you're good at. Your strengths are your strengths, and so you have to capitalize on those. They're weaknesses for a reason. It's called a weakness for a reason, because it's a weakness. But as you were talking, Mitch, about some of that, I was thinking in my head, I was like, there's brands also that kind of transcend into just our vocabulary, like Kleenex. You know, it's like, hand me a Kleenex. You know, here's, you know, well, it's a Puffs. Yeah, but I don't say, hand me a Puffs. You know, I don't say, hey, I want to drink a Coke. Yeah. Yeah, I don't say hand me I say, hey, I'm gonna drink a Coke,
right?
But it's a Pepsi.
That's probably the biggest example,
you
right
know.
there. And some of this is regional, but you know, you walk in, give me a Coke. Well, what you're saying is you want a soft drink. You want to, but
yeah,
it's so big that it's become like the generic term for any soft drink.
Yeah, nobody will Netflix and chill and turn on Disney Plus,
right?
Or maybe they do. I don't, you know, I'm not judging anybody out there. If that's what you do, nobody on the show is judging you. You will watch whatever streaming service you like. There, I made that statement to be fair.
And another example, and this may be generational, but my dad refers to every refrigerator as a Frigidaire.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
What's in the Frigidaire?
What pops in mind when you hear smartphone? What's the visual?
Ooh, there's a good one.
Yeah, me too.
iPhone for me.
You know, I don't think of an Android. I think that's interesting. That you know, I was thinking about this the other day. Do you remember where you were when you kind of experienced the iPhone for the first time?
Yep.
And think about that. Like,
yes.
Think about how many other things you remember where you were when you experienced it. You know, not to go in a negative way, but everybody knows where they were on 9/11.
Right.
And then you think about the iPhone. Not comparing the two.
No.
To be very clear, but I'm just saying. I remember being in, I guess, probably my English class in junior year of high school, and somebody pulled out an iPhone, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" I started asking people over the last week, "Do you remember where you were?" And everybody I've asked remembers exactly where they were.
Yeah, I was sitting in my office, and I was working another agency at the time, and my boss came in and he had it, and of course everybody in the hall, we were all out standing in the hallway, and within 2 seconds, looking over his shoulder, you know, oohing and ahhing over this amazing new device that he had. That was, what year was that? I'm afraid to even say.
It had to be like 2006-ish, 2007.
Yep, something like that.
Yeah, around 7. John, where were you when you first saw one?
Well, I can tell you, I can tell you with confidence where I was when I saw the first BlackBerry. How about that? I'm a little bit older.
That's a good one too. That kind of revolutionized business.
I was exactly. Got the ball
working for a previous company in packaging distribution. I was there about 16, 17 years, but we had one of our OEMs or like film manufacturers and he was standing in the lobby, and I happened to be going out, probably going on a sales call or whatever. So I was leaving the offices and going through the lobby, and I said, "Hey, Daryl, how you doing?" He said, "Oh, good, John." And there was something in his hand. I'm like, "You don't mind me asking, what's that in your hand?" He goes, "It's BlackBerry." I'm like, "Okay, I've heard of BlackBerry, but what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm checking email." And I said, "What? You're doing what?" He goes, "I'm checking email." I'm like, "Are you kidding? Let me see that." And I thought, oh my God, because I was thinking phones or BlackBerry smart, whatever, phone calls, but I had heard of BlackBerry. That they weren't that predominant or whatever. Hell, it's probably before Apple. So I don't know if that was like 1998 or 2001 or 1994, whatever it was. But
yeah, they were before they. Like I said, they were like the precursor to the smartphone. They weren't smartphones.
But I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I remember where it was. I remember the temperature that day. It was probably 77. It was sunny. And I mean, it was like where were you when? And I remember it. I can tell you what he was wearing. He was wearing a suit, like a brown suit. Mm-hmm. And that was very impactful to me when I saw the first BlackBerry. They did.
And the sky is opened up, and the sun was there, and the choir of angels all spoke. I mean, you just painted a really vivid picture for our listeners, right?
What's funny is, I mean, they were the be all end all in the business world, and then probably and I'm just guessing here, 5 to maybe less than 10 years later, what happened?
They went bye-bye.
Yeah, they did.
No. They didn't adapt. They didn't really adapt. I mean, you know, at
They
when
did.
the terms of the touchscreen came about. It wasn't necessary,
Yeah.
you know, to
No,
have
that
a
was the other-
keyboard on your
and the
phone.
That's the thing
stylus.
that struck me.
Uh,
Yeah, right. The stylus. The thing that struck me about the BlackBerry first time I saw one, I thought, those buttons are really small. and then the other thing,
yeah.
why BlackBerry? I mean, I'm a branding guy, and I get it. It was like, I wish I could have been in the room when they had that conversation, how they decided what they were going to call it.
Well, I know that as far as the use of the BlackBerry, I mean, John just, you know, vividly kind of explained how important and why it became and lasted so long. Because to this day, email is still one of the most important things you can do for your company. I mean, email marketing is huge. People just kind of ignore it because it's like email. You know, email's been around since 1994. But it's like, yeah, but it's still a very effective way to reach people, to grow an audience, to do things. And John, I know you got lots to say about email marketing. But yeah, I mean, it kind of like owned it. It owned it in that space. When you got to an iPhone didn't really have a lot of business apps that were great. It's like, okay, I can cut fruit on a virtual game on my phone, but how do I manage my inbox, Apple?
It didn't take them long though. It really didn't. I mean, and then you got the other smartphones that came along. It's just it's an interesting dynamic how that all evolved, and then you see where smartphones are now, and you see where BlackBerry is today. It's like it's almost tragic in some sense. You know, from a tech standpoint. So as we're talking about tech innovation, talking about brands that don't advertise, don't spend money on advertise. You've got Tesla. Which to me, if you really look at Tesla, it's amazing what a reflection they are of the mind behind the brand, and the fact that they are focused on disruption through innovation. They don't want to leap ahead of a trend. They don't want to, they don't seem to be concentrating, and this is probably a reflection of Elon Musk himself. He's not about jumping onto another trend or changing the trajectory, but he wants to start a whole new conversation. And sometimes his stuff seems really, really crazy. But then you've got Tesla, which has a very loyal audience. But then you got all the other things he's gotten into that seem off the wall, but now they've become a reality. Like rockets that take off, but then the launch vehicle actually comes back and lands. The renewable space travel.
Yeah, did anybody notice that in over of course, the pandemic and the election is taking up the news cycle, but does anybody realize we're in another space race? But it's in the open market now. It's like between SpaceX and Boeing and others now. I mean, it's happening right in front of us again. It's not my father. He's the baby boomer, so he remembers all of that stuff back then. Apollo and everything, and it's like. We're kind of in it again. We're trying to get back to the moon.
Well, and the funny thing is, not to get off on a tangent, but there have been people that have been screaming for decades that you needed to let private companies get involved because that's where the innovation takes place to actually move the ball even further forward. And now we finally got it. Well, and with the help and cooperation of NASA, which is fantastic. But now you don't have just one source.
But you know why? There's a goal. I mean, if you don't have a clearly defined goal, if you don't have a clear defined purpose, and you can see how I think you all can see how I'm dovetailing back in here. If you don't have a clearly defined strategy, goal, purpose, I mean, it's hard to get people to, rally behind the brand, to get excited about what you're doing, because you want them to have that excitement. I mean, John, you brought it up earlier. You want them to have passion that they're, for what you're doing and being a part of something. And people want purpose, And every brand has the ability to create purpose. And, all these things, all these brands you've listed here create purpose. The purpose of SpaceX is to, go out and achieve the goal of getting to the moon and then getting to Mars.
And doing it effectively.
When I think,
right,
you look at GoPro, you want to talk about a company of those on the list that empowered masses of people to have a purpose or to express their purpose in an entertaining way. You can't get any better than what GoPro did in terms of empowering their users.
Yeah, that's pretty
through user generated content. I mean, that whole brand is built on the backs of other people's YouTube videos, their customers' YouTube videos and Instagram videos. I mean,
And failed videos.
yeah, and really, what would GoPro be without that? I mean, it's just a fancy camera, but it's the consumer base that created that brand, and they empowered it, of course. But I think of those on the list of these 6, they're
Leverage your customers to tell your story.
Mm-hmm. And that's tough. I mean, it's tough to do.
Yeah,
and that happened organically in a large way. I don't know.
Well, we want to thank our guest today on the show because he's one of those people that has done that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I agree. So not to take the show down a notch, but I kind of want to bring this up. John, I don't know if you're a music fan or not, but we did lose this week one of the greatest innovators and guitar players in the world, I think. Eddie Van Halen passed away. I remember when we were talking about where were you when this happened. I'm going to remember where I was when the news came down that we lost this guy, because this is like from when I was a teenager. Like, I think we've all got idols. John, I don't know whose yours were, if you had any in music or not, but were you ever a fan of, I know it's kind of getting off a little bit of a sidetrack note here, but were you ever a fan of Eddie Van Halen, or were you more of Leonard Skinner,
Well,
or Aerosmith, or none of the above?
That's a good question. And philosophically, the people that stick in my mind are people that are trying to do better things for the world, like, and I don't mean to talk politics here, but John F. Kennedy. I remember when he was shot and killed. I remember Robert Kennedy. I remember Martin Luther King. I remember, those kind of things. Sports. I've got, heroes in sports. I've got groups that I love, but I don't put much emphasis in those areas for whatever reason. I'm not a diehard fan of really anything sports. I'm not a diehard fan of anything music. I love all music. I never thought I would. My dad would listen to classical music, and I remember saying, "I'll never, ever, ever listen to that." And guess what? to soothe me, I'll listen to classical music. So,
I like some Hans Zimmer. I like that.
But
I like
to see Eddie pass away, and I was a big fan of his. But again, for whatever reason, I put more emphasis on people curing cancer or solving COVID or doing those things. Those are the ones that I remember.
Mm-hmm.
The others are vague and gray of sports heroes that maybe have passed or. And I know I'm getting really boring here. It's probably showing what a true nerd I am. But
it's like you said, Jason. It's not the what, it's the how.
Yeah, I mean, whether it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, there is a way to connect to everybody in some way with something, either music, sports. Like, I'm not a sports guy either, John. I joke with the team all the time whenever Mitch talks about sports. I'm like, sports ball, yay! I mean, I get football. I have played it. I've played baseball. I've done, and I'm just kind of like, I don't care. But I understand the impact that these things have, because everything is a brand. Everything today. I mean, it's why NerdBrand became what it is because I looked around and I said, everybody's on this marketing bandwagon, but nobody's thinking about what they're saying. They're just grabbing a bullhorn and standing on a corner and screaming into it, hoping somebody comes around to listen. And it doesn't work. Your message isn't touching anybody. Like, people are like, why do you have a podcast and talk about nerd stuff and, like this or that? And, if it's a marketing podcast, then you'd be talking about the percentage of your click-through rate to your website and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
Right.
we could, but people are bored, including us. I spend at least a couple of hours editing the show. If I start to fall asleep
Right.
when I'm editing the show,
Right.
then it's a bad show. So, which I don't think it'll be the case here. But, it's like there is, John was earlier showing me like some posts that he did on LinkedIn. The engagement he was getting just off of stuff that was really more entertaining than it was.
It's
probably
the
I guess,
posts about a tactical thing you could do online or through digital ads or whatever. Gets a little interaction and mostly from people in the industry, but asking people what they thought of the new Smucker's logo, or
Oh yeah.
showing a video of somebody behind the scenes how a specific photo shoot was done. Those two posts resonated substantially more and got a lot more engagement, got a lot more views and reach than anything I've shared recently on a business topic. And on a platform like LinkedIn, you're thinking, well, that's what everybody's there for, right? Everybody's there to talk business, and they're not.
Right.
Really, LinkedIn's become a light Facebook.
It's business Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It is.
because it's made up of people.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, it's still people. People buy from people. People don't buy from nameless, faceless, digital entities, names. What people buy from people.
And to your point, Jonathan, never
that's just the way it
underestimate
is.
the entertainment value of advertising.
Well, especially in social. I mean, they've done the research. It's pretty much people want discounts, they want entertainment, or they want education. Anything beyond that, you're kind of going into waters where you're not going to have substantial reach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of what I do on LinkedIn on mine is more along the lines of the podcast. Very rarely do I share a blog post that I wrote or somebody wrote. Like, they know we have a website. They know that we have a blog. If you want to read resources and things that we have case studies there. We have all that stuff there. It's there. You know that. But hearing it from us audibly is one way to connect. And in my opinion, it's like that seems to have the best use of my time in posting to social media, because we all know social media can be a time suck. So posting about the podcast seems to be effective, for us. And that's what I focus on, other than commenting and congratulating people on other things as sincerely as I can. It's just, that's a major part of that. I mean, LinkedIn is eventually we'll probably do some sort of seminar on LinkedIn. I mean, we've got the venue and we've got the backing of the chamber. It's just eventually we just have to put it together, and then once we get on the other side of the pandemic, that'll help a lot. But yeah, I mean, it's because there's a lot of interest in it right now. I mean, people are like kind of they're looking at it. It's like they kind of come around to it in cycles, and I think I'm starting to see the wave come back around to it again. So, but anyways, I think that's probably going to do it for the show. Unless you guys have anything you want to add, anything you want to plug.
Well, I just want
to do it,
I
or
want to say
forever
thanks
hold your
to John
peace.
for coming on, and of course, I don't know how much it was touched on at the very beginning. We're glad to have you as a partner, and looking forward to making IQpack big and bold, and do all the things we talked about here today. So we definitely appreciate you coming on, and feel free to plug yourself again as we're at the end of the show.
Yeah, if we could template a client persona, IQpack comes pretty doggone close to the perfect client persona you want to work with, because great product, great people, great model. Not to say that makes it easy, as in like anybody could do it, but it sure gives you the raw material to work with, and it's a joy to work with you.
Yeah, and thank you. We appreciate that. We appreciate everything that you all are doing, and we feel the same way too. We've got great relationships with our customers, and relationships are two or threefold, right? There's a personal relationship where you actually care about the people that you're working with. And then there's the professional relationship that we want them to be recognized, because we work as an extension of their company. just like you guys do, right? What resources? One, you bring us greater bandwidth in marketing and branding, and trust me, we're not experts there. You all know that. We're probably not novice, but we're definitely not experts. And you bring a lot of that competency and bandwidth and expertise. I mean, from messaging and branding and website, videos, podcasts, everything. And I tell you what, we're all about traction. We're all about results. And what we're seeing is a growth that we never ever would have thought would happen this quick in the middle of a pandemic. And God bless everybody in the pandemic, But
Amen.
yeah, we're very fortunate. We're very blessed. We're doing incredibly well right now, and I think we've picked some good partners in you guys, and appreciate it.
Thank you. We're humbled.
Very much, very much. So I think that's gonna close the show for all of our listeners out there. You can go to nerdbrandagency.com/podcast and listen to the latest episodes. They are all up there, we promise. And you can go to iTunes or Spotify. We took down Google Play because Google changed the rules, and where the podcast is at on Google Play, I don't know. But we talked about Apple so much, maybe switch. Maybe think about it. Maybe that's
really
the thing.
quick. I'm going to if you guys want to learn more about IQpack, you can go to theiqpack.com and self-plug. We help them, develop the website, design the website and the brand. And if you're an e-commerce company, I know that's big right now, and that's something that John, you guys are certainly adept at handling. If you're an e-commerce operator or distributor in any capacity and you're listening, these are guys you want to talk to.
All right. Well, I want to thank our guests. John, thank you for being on the show. It's nice meeting you.
Yeah, we will.
We will meet face to face one day.
Bring a mask.
Yeah. Yeah, bring
John,
a mask.
We'll have you back sometime. You got to get back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll get him out of the closet. No, I got that. I tell you what, I got that guy working pretty hard on a lot of things. He's doing some great stuff for IQpack. He's also the other co-founder, so we kid back and forth a lot and have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun, but we get a lot of stuff done.
So thank you all for being on the show today. Thank you for our listeners. We're going to close out the show, and everybody have a great Friday. And remember, keep your nerd brand strong.